It was late, and I only meant to say goodnight to my neighbor, but the way she looked at me under that warm porch light made time slow down. Then she laughed softly and warned, "Careful, or I'll keep you here all night." And in that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. It was one of those nights when the world feels half asleep. The streets were quiet, lit only by the amber glow of a few tired street lamps. I had just parked my car after a long day, planning to slip straight into bed without so much as a glance at anyone. But then, I noticed it, the soft glow spilling from the house next door. Her house. Most nights, her lights were out by 10. But tonight, her porch light was on, and behind the curtain I could see the faint shimmer of movement. I slowed my steps, curious, though I told myself I was just being neighborly. Maybe she had company. Maybe she was working late. And then the door opened. She stepped outside, holding a wine glass, her other hand tucked loosely against her hip. The night air seemed to shape itself around her, carrying with it the faint sweetness of jasmine from the flowers that climbed her porch railing. She smiled when she saw me. An easy, confident smile, like she had expected me all along. "You're out late," she said, her voice warm and low, the kind that made the stillness of the night feel less lonely. I laughed lightly, rubbing the back of my neck. "Long day, just getting home." For a moment we stood like that, me on the edge of my driveway, her on her porch, shadows and warm lights stretching between us. It should have ended there, a polite nod, a simple goodnight. But something about the way she leaned against the railing, relaxed yet attentive, made me linger. "You should come by," she said after a pause, lifting her glass slightly as though toasting the night. "It's quiet out here. Too quiet for one person." Her words were casual, but the invitation underneath them was clear. And though I hesitated, I found myself stepping toward her gate. My heartbeat quickened. Not in panic, but in anticipation, like I was walking into a moment I didn't fully understand yet. Her porch light glowed soft and golden, outlining the curve of her hair and catching the fine lines near her eyes when she smiled again. She didn't hide her age. She wore it gracefully, with the kind of beauty that wasn't trying to impress anyone. It simply was. As I reached the steps, she pushed the door open wider, letting the warmth of her living room spill into the night. "Come in if you're not too tired," she said, tilting her head with that same knowing smile. And though every part of me had planned on sleep, my feet carried me forward. The scent of candle wax and faint perfume drifted out into the cool night, and I realized, just crossing her threshold, that this wasn't going to be a simple good night. It was the start of something I couldn't quite name, but already felt. Crossing her threshold felt strangely intimate, as though I was stepping not just into her house, but into her private world. The door closed behind me with a soft click, sealing out the night, and I was immediately wrapped in a warmth that was different from my own apartment. Gentler, more lived in, touched by someone's care. Her living room glowed with soft, amber light. A lamp in the corner threw golden shadows across the walls, where framed photographs and shelves of books seemed to whisper their own stories. A candle flickered faintly on the coffee table, carrying the subtle scent of vanilla and something floral. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt intentional. She slipped past me, barefoot, the hem of her loose sweater brushing mid-thigh. "Sit," she said, gesturing toward the couch with the confidence of someone who didn't have to ask twice. I obeyed, settling onto the cushions, which held the faint warmth of a house that had been lived in all evening. "Wine?" she asked, holding up her glass. "I think I'll stay clear," I said with a small laugh. "Too tired." "Tea, maybe, if it's not too much trouble." Her eyes flicked to mine, amused. "Tea at this hour? You're more disciplined than I'd expect." I shrugged. "Discipline or just habit? I've always liked the quiet that comes with it." She smiled, setting her glass aside before disappearing into the kitchen. I heard the faint clink of a kettle being set on the stove, the gentle murmur of water filling it. It struck me how quickly her space seemed to draw me in, not because it was grand, but because it carried her presence in every detail. When she returned, she carried 2 mugs, steam curling from the rims. She placed one carefully in front of me, her fingers brushing the back of my hand as she slid it across the table. The touch was fleeting, accidental perhaps, but it sent a current through me all the same. "Chamomile," she said, curling onto the opposite end of the couch. "So you'll sleep well after all this." I took a sip, the warmth spreading through me, though I wasn't sure if it was the tea or the way she was looking at me. Steady, curious, as if she was quietly studying me. We talked at first about simple things, the neighborhood, her garden, the hours I kept with work. But it didn't stay surface level for long. She asked the kind of questions that made me pause. "Do you like living alone? Do you ever feel restless?" I caught myself studying her, too. The way her fingers curled loosely around her cup, the way her laugh was softer now, almost thoughtful. For a moment, the candle flickered between us, and the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like a space being bridged, quietly and deliberately, by two people who hadn't expected to share this night together. And though nothing had happened yet, no declarations, no confessions, something in the air had already shifted. The tea had cooled by the time we both settled deeper into the couch. At first, I tried to keep to my side, respectful of the space, but the cushions seemed to draw us closer with every shift, until the air between us felt charged in a way I couldn't quite ignore. She set her mug down, her eyes lingering on me a little longer than casual conversation demanded. "You don't talk like most men your age," she said finally, almost as if she were thinking aloud. I gave a nervous laugh. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Maybe both." The firelight of the candle played across her face, softening the strength of her features, making them seem at once confident and quietly vulnerable. She leaned back against the cushion, her arm resting on the couch, so close that if I shifted even slightly, my sleeve would brush hers. I thought about that distance, so small, so fragile, and how easily it could disappear. She asked about my work, my family, and then, unexpectedly, my dreams. No one ever asked me that. Not really. And so I told her. Not everything, but enough. That I sometimes felt out of place, that I worried about wasting time, that I wanted something deeper than what people my age seemed to chase. She listened, not with polite nods, but with a kind of intense stillness, as though every word mattered. Her eyes never broke from mine, and the effect of that gaze was almost overwhelming. I wasn't used to being seen that closely. When I paused, uncertain, she laughed softly, a sound that carried warmth but also something unspoken. She shifted, crossing one leg over the other, her knee brushing against mine in the small space between us. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. "You surprise me," she said, tilting her head slightly. "I thought you'd be like the others, quick to impress, quick to disappear. But you actually listen." I wanted to say something clever in return, but the words stuck. Instead, I noticed the way her hand rested lightly on her knee, so close to mine that my skin tingled at the thought of what it might feel like if she let it drift just a little closer. I shifted forward, instinct more than decision, and for a breathless second, I thought she might close the distance. But she only watched me, her expression unreadable, her lips curving into the faintest of knowing smiles. The room grew quieter, though nothing had changed. The candle still flickered, the night still pressed softly against the windows, but everything felt different, as though the air itself was holding its breath. I leaned back slowly, trying to calm the restless pulse in my chest. She didn't comment, didn't tease. Instead, she lifted her cup again, took a slow sip, and looked at me with eyes that said more than words could manage. And I realized the tension wasn't something to break. It was something to hold. Time slipped away inside her living room, measured not by the clock but by the slow dimming of the candle on the table. Our cups sat forgotten, half empty, while our words trailed off into softer, quieter spaces. I hadn't realized how late it had gotten until I caught the faint shift of light outside her window, moon climbing higher, shadows lengthening. I shifted forward on the couch, reluctantly setting my cup aside. "I should let you rest," I said, though the words came out heavier than I intended. She arched an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Rest? Do I look tired to you? I hesitated, caught between honesty and courtesy. No, not at all. But it's late, and… I stood, smoothing the crease of my jacket as if preparing myself for the distance that stepping outside would bring. She didn't move. Instead, her gaze followed me, steady and amused, as though she already knew something I didn't. When I reached the edge of the room, hand brushing the strap of my bag, her voice cut softly through the quiet. "Careful," she said, a playful lilt in her tone, "or I'll keep you here all night." The words landed between us like a match struck in the dark. Playful on the surface, yes, but carrying a weight that went far deeper. I froze, not out of fear, but out of the sudden awareness of everything unspoken. I turned, meeting her eyes, searching for the meaning tucked beneath that teasing smile. Her head tilted slightly, one brow raised as if daring me to answer. For a moment, I laughed. Too softly, too quickly. "That's dangerous talk," I said, but my voice didn't have the steadiness I wanted. "Dangerous?" she repeated, leaning forward just enough that the shadows deepened around her. "Or tempting?" My pulse quickened, a thrum I felt in my chest, in my fingertips. I should have said something light, something that would diffuse the moment. Instead, silence stretched between us, thick with possibility. She rose from the couch slowly, unhurried, setting her glass aside. The sound of it touching the table seemed louder than it should have been. She walked toward me. Not quickly, not seductively, just with the calm assurance of someone who knew the effect she carried with every step. When she reached me, she didn't close the space entirely. Her fingers brushed my wrist lightly, stopping me mid-motion as I adjusted my bag. The touch was so subtle it could have been nothing, except it wasn't. It lingered, gentle but deliberate, sending a current through me. Her smile softened, though her eyes held mine firmly. "I'm teasing," she said, though her voice had dropped lower, steadier. But the way she held my wrist told a different story. For a suspended moment, neither of us moved. The house was quiet, the night beyond the door waiting, and I realized leaving wasn't just a matter of politeness anymore. It had become a choice. Her fingers lingered lightly on my wrist, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might pull me closer. Instead, she let go with a quiet sigh, stepping back just enough to give me space. The playful edge in her smile softened, replaced by something more thoughtful. "You don't have to go," she said gently. "Not if you don't want to." Her words weren't teasing this time. They were an offering, an admission of sorts. I hesitated, then let my bag slip from my shoulder, the strap sliding soundlessly against the wood floor. I returned to the couch and she followed, settling back into her place with a kind of stillness that felt different now. No more playful games, something deeper was pressing at the edges. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy with things waiting to be said. She ran her fingertip along the rim of her glass absent-mindedly, her eyes lowered. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before, almost fragile. "I don't usually do this," she admitted. "Invite people in. Stay up talking until the hours blur together." She gave a short, rueful laugh. "Most nights, it's just me. This house, this silence. It gets loud sometimes." Her words settled in me, tugging at something I recognized. Loneliness, disguised in confidence, hidden in the way she carried herself. I leaned forward, my elbows resting on my knees. "I get that," I said softly. "I know I'm younger, but I know what it feels like to keep yourself busy just so the quiet doesn't feel so heavy. To go through the motions but wonder if anyone really sees you." Her gaze lifted then, meeting mine with an intensity that startled me. For a long moment, she just looked at me, her lips parting as if she might speak, then closing again. Instead, she reached out, her hand resting lightly on my forearm. Her touch was gentle, but there was weight in it. An anchor, a thank you, a confession all at once. "You shouldn't understand that at your age," she said finally. "But you do." I felt my chest tighten, not with sadness, but with the strange relief of being understood in return. I turned my hand slightly, so that my fingers brushed against hers, and she didn't pull away. The candle flickered between us, shadows dancing on the walls, but I barely noticed. All I could feel was the warmth of her hand, the way it steadied me, the way it said things words couldn't. "I don't mind the quiet tonight," I whispered. "Not with you." Her breath caught, so faint I almost missed it. She smiled then, small and real, the kind of smile that comes when a weight is lifted, even if just for a moment. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about teasing anymore. This was about two people, across years and expectations, quietly confessing that the night felt better because they weren't facing it alone. Her hand still rested on my forearm, warm and steady, when the silence stretched out again. But this time it wasn't heavy, it was tender. A pause where both of us seemed to feel the weight of being close, of knowing neither of us had to fill the space with words. She shifted slightly, curling one leg beneath her on the couch, and turned to face me more directly. The candlelight flickered across her features, softening them, deepening the shadows beneath her eyes. I found myself memorizing the way the light traced her cheekbones, the gentle curve of her mouth. "You're thoughtful," she said finally, her voice almost a murmur. "I can see it in the way you listen. It's rare. Rarer than you know." Her compliment landed deeper than I expected. I wanted to deflect, to make light of it, but instead I let the words settle. "You make it easy to listen," I replied, and even as I said it, I realized how true it was. She reached toward me then, slowly, almost absent-mindedly, and adjusted the collar of my shirt. Her fingers brushed the edge of my neck, warm against skin that suddenly felt too aware of itself. The simple touch sent a shiver through me, though I did my best to stay still. "There," she whispered, as though her adjustment meant something more. Her hand lingered just a fraction too long before she pulled it back. I swallowed, my pulse unsteady. Almost without thinking, I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. My hand hovered a moment too long near her cheek, and in that hesitation, she leaned ever so slightly into the motion, her breath catching faintly. We were close now, so close that I could feel the warmth of her against me, the faint rise and fall of her breathing. Neither of us moved further, yet neither pulled away. It was as if we were suspended in that delicate space where the world had narrowed down to two people, a couch, and the quiet rhythm of breath between them. Finally, she exhaled softly and leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. The weight was gentle but grounding. Her hair brushed my jaw, carrying the faint scent of her shampoo, something floral and familiar. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I let my arms settle carefully around her shoulders, not pulling her closer, just steadying her there. Her hand rested near mine, close enough that our fingers brushed with the slightest shift. Each accidental graze felt deliberate, though neither of us acknowledged it aloud. I closed my eyes briefly, listening to the quiet, her breathing, the faint crackle of the candle, the muted hum of the night outside. And in that stillness, I realized how rare it was to sit this close to someone and feel both peace and tension at the same time. I didn't want to move, and from the way she lingered against me, I sensed she didn't either. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder, and I could have stayed there forever, listening to the rhythm of her breath, feeling the quiet steadiness of her presence against me. But time has its own way of nudging reality back into place, and eventually she shifted, sitting up a little straighter. Her hand brushed against mine as she adjusted herself, and for a moment, she left it there, her fingers curling ever so slightly, like she was reluctant to let the moment end. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost reluctant. "It's late," she said, her eyes flicking toward the dark window. "You'll be exhausted in the morning." I wanted to protest, to tell her the night was worth more than sleep. But instead, I just smiled faintly and nodded. "Probably." She rose first, and I followed, the two of us moving quietly through her living room as though afraid to break whatever spell had settled there. She walked me to the door, her steps unhurried, her posture graceful even in the simple act of seeing me out. At the threshold, I paused, not wanting to step into the cool night just yet. The porch light glowed softly, casting her in a golden frame, her hair catching in the faint draft as the door creaked open. We stood there, looking at each other. The silence between us was no longer heavy, no longer uncertain. It was filled with something warm, unspoken, and undeniable. She reached out, brushing her hand across mine as if by accident, though the pause in her touch gave her away. Her fingers lingered warm against my skin, and then, without warning, she leaned in and kissed my cheek. The touch of her lips was gentle, brief, but it carried a weight that seemed to settle deep into me. My pulse raced at the simplicity of it, the softness, the warmth, the quiet promise wrapped inside a single gesture. When she pulled back, her lips curved into a smile that was half playful, half earnest. "Next time," she whispered, her eyes holding mine with steady assurance. "I might mean it." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening in the best way. I didn't trust myself to say much, so I just smiled back. The words caught somewhere between my heart and throat. She let her hand trail from mine slowly, deliberately, before stepping back into the glow of her home. I lingered a second longer, memorizing the scene, her framed in warm light, me standing in the cool hush of the night, before finally stepping down onto the quiet street. The air outside felt sharper, cooler, carrying the scent of dew and distant jasmine. But her presence still clung to me, the warmth of her cheek against my shoulder, the ghost of her lips on my skin, the echo of her voice teasing at the edge of possibility. And as I walked back to my door, heartbeat unsteady, I knew one thing for certain. This night wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Sparkles, if the story moved you, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more slow burn age gap romances. And if you've ever had a moment like this, where a simple night changed everything, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.